There are, as I say, lots of stories in the news that are of great concern to me, and I'm sure they are to you. In fact, how about the Father Stu movie? This is a film that's gotten a lot of press, especially from Catholic media outlets. And Mark Wahlberg, Mel Gibson, huge Hollywood A-list actors. It should be a hit. And a lot of people, I would say probably most people, have said they absolutely love it, but not everyone has said they love it. In fact, Austin Ruse, he is a contributing editor at Crisis Magazine. He's also the author of Under Siege, No Finer Time to Be a Faithful Catholic, has put out a critical review of Father Stu. So we've invited him on to talk about that. Good morning to you, Austin Ruse.
Good morning to you. Thanks for having me.
Praise be to God. We're grateful for your time. So let's start with why do you watch this film? Were you asked to review this film? How did you start with that part?
You know, I took my family to a movie called Uncharted, the new Tom Holland movie with Mark Wahlberg. And don't bother, it's not that good. And one of the trailers was for this movie, Father Stu. And my daughter, who's 16, Lucy, her reaction was so funny. When the trailer was over, she leaned over and she says, "How is that possible? How is that even legal?" Because here's a trailer before a Hollywood movie on a obviously Christian theme, and she understands the state of Hollywood. And I said, I don't know. Don't they understand the separation of church and state? So anyway, we were all fired up about going to see the Father Stu movie. And I got it in my mind that I would review it because I got a note from the publicist, the Carmel Communications people who I know, and I said, I think I want to write about this. So they sent me a link, and I invited the neighbors over. And we were going to watch it, and that fell through. And then I was going to watch it with my daughter, and the technology wouldn't work to, put it up on the TV. So it was just on my computer. So I watched it alone. And so the expectations that I had were so high that it was going to be a slick Hollywood movie with a Catholic theme. And then what I saw was relentless vulgarity, crudity. And the feeling that I had was, I am so grateful that our dear friends, disciples, and their little kids weren't sitting there with me watching this because of that. The publicist people said, I said, it's got an R. Why is it got an R? And this is what they're saying. Well, it's just language, they say. It's just language. And, we've all these days heard F-bombs in movies and an occasional F-bomb, and so fine, we can deal with that. But it's relentless F-bombs. One kind of mature, icky scene, and it's more than F-bombs. There's S-bombs, and it's just on and on and on. And so my expectations were so high, and that might have been a problem. One of the main problems is that my expectations, I didn't manage my expectations sufficiently, such that when all of this happened, it really struck me sideways. And as I say in the lead in my column, it made me a little bit angry.
It's interesting because it had received a ton of Catholic media promotion. And I was thinking about taking my wife on a date night. I'm like, we haven't been to a date night in a while. We haven't been to the movie theater in forever. Maybe this is something we can go see, because there's almost nothing we can ever go see at the movie theater anymore. So maybe this is something. And then I asked on our group, hey, who's seen this film? What do you think? And then I had two people reach out to me that I know and trust very well. One said they had taken young people to go watch this film, like maybe 20-somethings. And he said he was utterly embarrassed after the film and felt like he had to apologize to them.
Yeah. Well, see, and that's something that struck me with regard to the way that they're marketing it. Bring your friends and family. And I'm thinking, there's going to be youth groups that are going to be taken to this, and the head of the youth group is going to have to explain to parents what just happened, and this deep sense of embarrassment. So yeah, and it's more than just that. There's cringy dialogue. There's Catholic illiteracy. The one scene where he's being baptized, he strips off his shirt. They're like in a Catholic mass, and he strips off his shirt.
That's
and the director
awkward.
Lovingly shows his ass.
There's no getting around that.
And,
that's awkward. I mean, you can't explain that away. I mean, we interrupt this film to bring you Mark Wahlberg without a shirt. We've seen that 1,000 times.
We all know they wear brown robes.
He also shows him in his skin-tight skivvies in the kitchen twice. Well, not just once, but twice. Panned up the thighs and to the bottom, and it was like, what are you doing this for? So the director really likes Marky Mark's body.
Yeah, I'm sure.
So there's that.
Let me play
and other forms of Catholic.
Let me play devil's advocate, though, because a lot of people I also trust have been on the other side of this argument. Come on, Austin.
That's right.
Come on, Austin. Yes, there is some language, but Father Stu was a gritty character. He was a sinner, and we need to depict how sinners, grave sinners, have this conversion experience. And so the good outweighs the bad in this film, Austin. How do you respond to that?
That's a good question. I'll tell you what. But the end of it, I'll tell you. Then this is what I said in my piece. The end of it. Well, first of all, let's get back to the grittiness of Stu, because I've thought a lot about this since I saw it, and I had the benefit of a reviewer's copy, so I could go back and forth over all the mumbly, dark, unintelligible dialogue to figure out what they're saying. But when you think about it, his background wasn't all that gritty in real life or even in the movie. I mean, in the movie, they show him turning down a drunken blonde in a bar. So he's not presented as a womanizer. He doesn't commit any crimes. Yeah, he was a boxer. So what? They didn't really. He came from like a difficult home, sure, but they didn't really show him with a gritty background. The grittiness comes almost exclusively from the fact that his mom, his dad, and himself are vulgarian potty mouths. That's the grittiness. So there's that. It sort of fails in its own arc, that he goes from desperate circumstances to conversion in the priesthood. It doesn't really show that. But I understood that Christ meets us where we are. But he actually meets Christ in a bar when he's drinking. And his exchange with Christ is vulgar, and Christ's response was vulgar, and that's one of the strange things in the movie. And I can't say it because you have a family audience, but what Christ says, he delivers a vulgar line. Christ will meet somebody in a strip club, but he will not put $5 bills in anybody's Jesus drink.
Amen.
Christ will come to somebody, in a bank robbery, but he's not going to pick up a gun and blast a security guard. He will come and meet us at these moments, but he's not going to join in all the fun.
Yeah.
And they show him joining in all the vulgarity, and that was a little bit off. Having said all that, the end of the movie, pretty darn powerful.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's for me a really big turnoff, and I think it starts a kind of a dialogue in my head about, maybe is it time? And I'm wondering what your take is on this. In 1934 there was a group called the Catholic Legion of Decency. It was founded by the Archbishop of Cincinnati at the time. And this organization was dedicated to identifying for Catholic audiences objectionable content in motion pictures. And I'm just wondering, do you think maybe it's time to bring something like that back? And what are the chances of bringing it here?
Well, I'll tell you, there are such reviewing sites. And quite frankly, there's one called Dove. There's one called Good Films. But can I tell you what the best one is? It's the website called IMDb, Internet Movie Database. And the reason it's the best is because regular viewers, it's not a bunch of people that are hired by Dove or Good Films and watches them and comments. These are real people, real moms and dads writing on these themes right directly onto the website. So I contribute to IMDb. Anybody can log in with an account and review, and that's the one that I use exclusively. These days, not everybody, I would say even somebody from the church would not necessarily know all of the blinking yellow, blinking red lights that parents may have with regard to movies. For instance, the movie La La Land. Let's talk about that for a second. It's a pretty unobjectionable movie, except in one scene, they show the two characters laying in bed together, fully dressed and talking. The very next scene, is the morning, and they're coming out of that room. Now, you never saw anything objectionable. They never began anything objectionable, but the context of walking out of the bedroom in the morning explained everything. That is not caught by quote-unquote Christian reviewers, especially parents, because parents are very concerned with the context of something, even if something isn't shown. So it's a complicated business these days. So there are sites out there like that. But I would urge parents to look at IMDb. I mean, we go right to IMDb all the time. And to contribute to IMDb, all you need is an account. But, yeah, it's necessary. It's needed.
It seems like it's a lost art in movie making, which is the value of innuendo to give proper context to characters because you want to give them this character arc journey. I was a vulgar, hedonistic person, so I could relate to characters like Father Stu, and I think that's the target audience. But I have to go back to something you said at the beginning of our conversation: is the way they marketed this. I think they're leading people to believe that you can watch this with friends and family and kids and whatever, and yet this is rated R. And so, how would you have felt?
Well, additionally,
how would you have felt if they had been very upfront by that, saying this is not for kids? Would you have felt differently about the film then?
Much of life is expectation management, and so what hit me really hard was that my expectations were way different than, because this is what I was fully expecting. I was fully expecting to be able to sit down with my family, 13-year-old daughter, 16-year-old daughter, and our friends, disciples down the street who, have kids in grade school all the way to high school, and that, yes, there's going to be some F-bombs, but other than that, it's going to be perfectly fine. It's not perfectly fine. And I would have been humiliated, embarrassed, and angry. The disciples would have been mad at me. They're our good friends and neighbors. So, I don't know how you market that, but there are certain things in there that didn't need to be in there. The Mark Wahlberg character is propositioned by a male agent, and there's this shot of the male agent's, crotch. This is not a good scene for kids. And there were a few other things like that. So, yeah, it would have been deeply embarrassing and anger-making had we watched the whole thing. But then I come back to the fact, actually, before we finish, I want to talk about...
We're out of time, actually. Maybe we'll have to have you come back, but we are out of time. Austin Ruse, we will encourage you to check out his review of it on Crisis Magazine. That's crisismagazine.com. But you can get the other side, the other opinion by David Hahn, also on crisismagazine.com. Austin Ruse, thank you for your time today. God bless you.